Hey there, welcome back to the Smart Money Mamas channel. I'm Chelsea, and today we're talking about one of my favorite budgeting hacks. But before we do that, make sure you hit the subscribe button below this video and click the little bell so that you get notified anytime we issue a new video. Here at Smart Money Mamas, I want to help you live a thriving, full life while affording the future that you deserve and raising kids who are financially savvy, who don't have to struggle the way we have with money in their early adulthood. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified about new videos. So what are we talking about today? What budgeting hack could we possibly be covering? Well, my favorite budgeting hack is to actually have a separate bank account for your spending money. And I don't mean the money that you spend on groceries. I mean the money that you spend for you, your spending money. And if you have a partner, he or she should also have their own separate spending account. Now, a lot of different people talk about the importance of having your own spending money, your own allowance in your budget. I don't really love the word allowance as respect to adults. I feel like it removes some of that autonomy that we have as adults. But still, they talk about the importance of having that in your budget. And I totally agree with that. When we don't make space in our budget for taking care of ourselves, for self-care, for the things that matter to us, budgeting feels way too restrictive, not something that we want to do. And we don't feel like we have a lot of choice in how we spend our money. Even though we still do, we don't feel like we do. And that means that we're not going to stick to our budget long term. So having some money set aside in your budget for spending is incredibly important. But I like to take it a next step and having actually separate bank accounts for that spending money for you and your partner if you have one. Why do we do this? Why does it help, right? It feels like it could add some extra complication to your budget, to your finances to have multiple bank accounts. Why would you do that? Well, actually, what we found is that this helps both overspenders and people like me who struggle to spend money on themselves. So how does that work? Well, for overspenders, if you have a separate account, a place that card, that debit card is only for your spending money, you know when it's gone. And when you go to swipe that card and there's no more money there, if you use a bank account like Chime, which is what we use, and I'll tell you about that in a second, the charge will just be declined. There's no overage fees. There's no things like that. And you'll know that you're out of money to spend. When you use it in your main bank account, when you put your spending money in your main bank account and you're making transactions on your credit cards or you're spending cash or you're using your debit card and you haven't updated your budget in a while, now ideally we want to make sure that you've updated your budget at least on a weekly basis, but let's be honest, that doesn't always happen. And human beings, we're pretty terrible estimators. Like we think we've spent $50, but really we've spent $80. And so what happens is when you don't have that actual pool to limit you, you overspend. And it's hard to catch it unless you're regularly updating that budget, unless you have a separate account and you can watch that value specifically go up or down, right? For people like me, who struggle with spending money, who are more focused on long-term savings, and we struggle a little bit with that idea of security and really wanting as much money in the bank as possible, we don't give ourselves the freedom to enjoy our money. And money is a means to an end, not an end in itself. Money is a way to get us the life that we want. And so just stacking money in the bank for some eventual use that never actually happens because you're not actually comfortable spending money on yourself, that's not helpful. That's not healthy. And so when you have that separate account, when you know that this money has been earmarked specifically for those things, specifically for you, that there's no other transactions that come out of that spending account, you have more freedom. You have more ability to tell yourself, okay, all of our goals are taken care of. All the things we want to do are taken care of. This money is for me and I'm okay to go spend it. So for a long time, my husband and I actually had completely joint accounts. Everything was basically in one checking account, one high yield savings account that was our emergency fund, but everything came out of this main checking account. And that worked for us for quite a while, several years, and partially because we use YNAB that creates buckets. We did a whole beginner video on YNAB if you haven't used it before, but it creates like little sinking fund envelope categories for all the different parts of your budget. So even though we only had one bank account, we saw things in many different buckets, and so that was okay. But after a while, we noticed a few things. One was anytime either of us spent money out of our spending account, we had to talk to each other about it after the fact, right? When we would sit down to do our weekly budget meeting, we would have to say, yeah, I spent $80 on that thing, which was, my husband, I bought a new board game or I bought something for woodworking. And that removed a little bit of that autonomy that's so important in money management, especially with couples. And on a fun note, we couldn't really surprise each other with gifts, right? Because we'd sit down to do the budget and someone would have ordered something for the other person and we'd ask, oh, what's that line item? And all of a sudden the cat's out of the bag, right? And so we wanted a way where we both had a little bit more freedom, a little bit more space for our money. We wanted to keep everything joint, but when it came to our spending money, how could we give each other a little bit more freedom? So we opened separate bank accounts. Now, we did a ton of research on different bank accounts we wanted to use, and we ended up using Chime. And so if you guys can see this card here, we ended up using Chime. Chime is an online bank, and I absolutely love them. They have no fees. They have a great savings rate on their savings account. You can actually open another free savings account that's connected to your account. And it's really, really easy. The app's easy to use. It's easy to follow. And one of our favorite things, my husband and I both love this, is that every morning we get a notification of how much money is in our bank account. It gives us a little update. And when we spend money, it lets us know. Or we get money deposited, it lets us know with these cute little fun emojis. And so we're both hyper aware of how much money we have to spend. And we're less likely to overspend because we have these notifications. We know how much money is in our account. And if one month we decide to not spend our spending money, it rolls over to the next month. It just stays in that account and it can grow if we're saving for something bigger. Or if it whittles down, we know that we have to wait a little while to build that back up. And so we love having these separate accounts. Now, if you and your partner are interested in opening separate spending accounts, one of the best things to do is to have a conversation about how much money should you be allocating to that spending money every month. This requires going back to your money goals, really understanding your budget and what you want to achieve together as partners. And then what are your spending habits? And so one thing I want to remind you is that my husband and I actually have separate different amounts that go into our spending accounts each month. I get a little more money. The reason I get a little more money is because I get my hair cut once a month. I'm a little late on the haircut right now, but I get my hair cut once a month. He cuts his hair at home. And if he even went to get his hair cut, he would do it at a barber, which is much cheaper than going to a salon. Now, I don't go to an expensive salon, but still, it costs a little bit more money. And so we decided how much we had to spend on fun things, and then we added my salon spending onto that number, and we added it up, and now we just don't worry about it. If somebody's feeling a little stuck or a little deprived, or we feel like we need a little bit more or a little bit less in those accounts, we sit down and talk about it at our weekly budget meeting. But other than that, we have complete freedom in those accounts. We don't monitor how much is in each other's spending accounts. We actually don't really have a way to do that. And it's created that sense of freedom, that sense of autonomy. So if you struggle with overspending, if you struggle with allowing yourself to spend money on what matters to you, I highly recommend opening separate spending accounts specifically for those expenses. Pick a bank that has no fees or very low fees, that doesn't have account minimums, because you want to make sure that this is probably not going to be a super high dollar account. And so make sure that it's set aside just for that, and open that account as soon as possible. I highly recommend Chime. We'll have a link to Chime below this video, but make sure you've created space in your budget and that you've had some limits around it, but you've created space for the things that matter most to you. Budgeting and managing your money should not be about deprivation. It should be about spending your money on the things that matter most to you today and in the future. And I know that you can do that. You are fantastic. I can't wait to see what you achieve. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, mamas.